You're working harder than you ever have. You know this because your calendar is full and your sleep is short, and somewhere in the last 2 years you stopped having hobbies. You just have projects now. You optimized your mornings. You cut out things that didn't scale, and you're still behind. Not catastrophically, but persistently, that low hum of not enough that follows you from Sunday night into Monday morning and doesn't really leave. Here's what that feeling is actually telling you, and it's not what any productivity influencer will say. Every task you complete, every hour you log, every deliverable you ship, your brain uses those as data points. Evidence of progress. But the math keeps coming out wrong. You do more, the bar moves. You work harder, the gap widens. And at some point, a thought starts forming that you'd rather not have. Maybe the problem isn't the system or the strategy or the amount of hours. Maybe the problem is you. That thought is wrong, but not in the way you'd hope. The thing you haven't examined, the thing that most men who are grinding never stop to look at, is what you're actually measuring. You're measuring output, tasks completed, hours put in, results delivered, and you're measuring them against an outcome that isn't yours to control. That gap, the one between what you do and what happens because of it, is where the feeling lives, and nobody told you that gap can't close, because if it could, someone would have closed it by now. There's a man who would find your problem interesting. He spent most of his early life as property, literally owned by another person, in one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world. His owner was a freedman named Epictetus, a man who worked in Nero's court, near the center of an empire run by a man who had his own mother killed. Not a mild environment. His name was Epictetus. He walked with a permanent limp. His owner broke his leg and it didn't heal right. He had no citizenship, no property to refuse a direct order. And in that condition, with those constraints, he developed the most precise account of human freedom that Western philosophy has ever produced. What he kept noticing was this: the people around him who had everything he didn't were miserable in a way he couldn't explain by their circumstances alone. They had choices, they had resources, they could set goals and pursue them, and they were suffering in a way that the slave who had none of those options wasn't necessarily suffering. He found that gap philosophically interesting. He spent the rest of his life explaining it. The explanation he landed on is uncomfortable for anyone who's been taught that hard work leads to outcomes. It isn't that hard work doesn't matter. It's that you've been measuring the wrong thing, and the measurement itself is what's breaking you. Epictetus built his entire philosophy on one distinction. He called it the most important thing he could teach. Some things are up to us, some things are not. He lists what's up to us: our judgment, our impulse, our desire, our aversion. What's not: our body, our reputation, our rank, our property. Every outcome you're chasing professionally, the promotion, the revenue number, the recognition, the deal closing, falls squarely into the second category. Not up to you. You can influence them. You can't determine them. In the Enchiridion, his lecture notes, transcribed by a student named Arian without his permission, he states this plainly: men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. For example, death is not terrible, for if it were, it would have seemed so to Socrates, for the opinion about death that it is a terrible thing. When then we are impeded or disturbed or grieved, let us never blame others, but ourselves, that is, our own opinions. Read that again. Not the death part, the structure of it. He's saying the disturbance doesn't come from the thing. It comes from the opinion about the thing, including the opinion that output should equal outcome, including the belief that harder work should produce proportionally better results. That belief, that measurement, is doing damage that the workload itself isn't doing. You can work 12 hours and control all 12. You cannot control what those 12 hours produce in the world. Those are different quantities, and you've been treating them as the same one. Aaron Beck didn't read Epictetus when he was developing cognitive behavioral therapy in the 1960 seconds, or if he did, he didn't say so. He was working with depressed patients in Philadelphia. What he kept finding systematically was that the distress wasn't caused by circumstances. It was caused by a category of thinking he called cognitive distortions, patterns of interpreting events that reliably produced suffering regardless of what the events actually were. One of the most common ones he identified was something called the locus of control error, the belief that your outcomes are a direct reflection of your effort and worth. That if something went wrong, you must have done something wrong, that if you work hard enough, results will follow. That the gap between your effort and your outcome is evidence of your inadequacy. Beck's patients weren't lazy, a lot of them were high achievers. That was almost the pattern. The harder someone worked at controlling outcomes, the more evidence they accumulated of their own failure when outcomes didn't comply. The therapy that worked wasn't telling them to work harder, or to find better strategies, or to optimize more. It was teaching them to identify the belief itself, the one that says outcome reflects effort reflects worth, and to see that the belief isn't true, Epictetus from a slave cell in Rome, Aaron Beck from a clinical office in Pennsylvania. 2 different centuries, 2 different disciplines, and they arrived at something close enough to make you wonder what they were both observing. The error isn't the effort, the error is the measurement. Confusing what you control with what you don't control produces suffering. That's the diagnosis in both traditions, separated by 2,000 years. You're thinking, if you stop caring about outcomes, nothing gets done. Companies don't get built, careers don't get made. Men who don't care about results don't provide for anyone. This is the most common pushback, and it rests on a misread. Epictetus didn't stop working. He ran a school in Nicopolis for decades. His lectures were apparently good enough that a Roman senator named Arrian considered them worth preserving without permission. He cared about what happened inside his school. He just didn't outsource his stability to whether any given student took the lesson. The Stoic framework isn't asking you to not care about outcomes. It's asking you to locate your judgment in what you can control, the quality of your action, the clarity of your reasoning, the integrity of your effort, and to hold the outcome as what he called a preferred indifferent, something you prefer without requiring it. You work hard, you do excellent work, you want the result. You just don't build your sense of adequacy on whether the result arrives. That's not passivity. That's harder, actually, than tying your self-worth to outcomes. When you tie worth to output, at least there's something to chase. When you locate your judgment in the quality of action itself, you have nothing to blame for your state of mind except your own thinking. And most men would rather grind 12-hour days than sit with that. But the grinding isn't closing the gap. You already know this. That's why you're here. There's a moment, usually around 11 p.m., when the day's finally done, where you inventory what you accomplished. And if the inventory doesn't match some internal number, the feeling comes, not enough, wasted day, behind again. That inventory is measuring output against outcome. It's asking, did the world respond to my effort the way I needed it to? And that's a question the world has no obligation to answer correctly. Epictetus proposes a different inventory, one question only. Did you exercise your judgment well today? Did you act with integrity on the things that were yours to control? Not? Did the deal close? Did your boss notice? Did the number move? Those aren't yours. They're preferred indifference, things you work toward, not things you stake your adequacy on. He writes in the Enchiridion, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. Whoever, therefore, desires nothing of those things that are not in our power is free." This is often misquoted as passivity. It isn't. It's a surgical reassignment of measurement. Stop evaluating yourself against outcomes you don't control. Start evaluating yourself against the quality of the action you actually took. Doing that is genuinely difficult. It means you can no longer use a good outcome to excuse poor thinking, and you can no longer use a bad outcome as evidence of your failure. You're left with just the work and just your judgment about how you did it. No external validation of adequacy available. Most men would find that terrifying. Epictetus found it liberating. He was right about which one of those is the better response. Epictetus was freed at some point. We don't know exactly when or how. He moved to Nicopolis, a city in northwestern Greece, and started teaching. He never published anything. He never sought recognition. He had students who became senators and consuls, people with far more worldly power than he'd ever have, and he apparently didn't care about that asymmetry at all. He cared about whether the teaching was good. That's the inventory he ran. Here's what this means for you right now, wherever you are, in whatever you're grinding through. The work you do today, the quality of your thinking, the care in your execution, the honesty of your judgment, those are yours. Entirely. Nobody can take them, reassign them, or make them worse without your participation. The outcome of that work isn't yours, never was. You're not falling behind because you're not working hard enough. You're falling behind because you've been measuring yourself against a variable you don't own, and every time the variable doesn't comply, you log it as evidence against yourself. 2,000 years of philosophy and 60 years of clinical psychology both point to the same thing. The measurement is the problem, and you can change it today without changing anything about the hours you put in. Do the work, do it well, hold the outcome loosely, evaluate yourself on what was yours to control. That's the entire thing. It's available right now, today, this week, whatever you're carrying, and it doesn't require waiting for better circumstances. Epictetus didn't have better circumstances, he had better measurement. If this landed, there's more where it came from every week on this channel. Subscribe, and the next time you're stuck in that 11 p.m. inventory, you'll have more to work with.